The red numbers on my digital alarm clock read 2:03 a. In my line of work, or at least the line of work I used to do before I retired and began collecting my pension, sleep was a luxury, not a given right. You learn to wake up instantly. No grogginess, no confusion. I spent 30 years as a logistics commander for the U.S. Army. I moved millions of dollars in equipment, kept supply chains alive in hostile zones, and made sure that no soldier was ever left behind. So when the phone on my nightstand vibrated against the mahogany wood, my hand closed around the receiver before the second ring. I expected a wrong number. I did not expect the sound of a child failing to hold back her tears. "Grandpa?" It was a whisper so quiet I almost missed it. It was Mia, my 8-year-old adopted granddaughter. Her voice was shaking so violently the syllables vibrated. "Mia," I sat up immediately, the cold night air hitting my chest. "Why are you whispering, honey?" "Is everything okay, Grandpa? I'm thirsty." The confusion hit me first. Why was she calling me at 2 in the morning for water? Her bedroom was just down the hall from her parents' master suite. My son, Austin, and my daughter-in-law, Monica, were heavy sleepers, but they weren't deaf. "Honey, go ask your daddy for water. It's late, I can't." Her voice cracked a tiny sound that made the hair on my neck stand up. "The door is locked, Grandpa, the big door, the front door, the back door, and the garage door." I knocked on Mommy and Daddy's room, but nobody answered. "I think they are gone. It's really dark, and I'm scared." My blood ran cold. It felt like ice water injected directly into my veins. I didn't tell her it was a nightmare. A man knows when something is fundamentally wrong. I survived 3 decades in the military by listening to that instinct, and right now, it was screaming like an air raid siren. "Listen to me, Mia." I was already out of bed, pulling on my heavy trousers. "Go into your closet, take your blanket, close the door, and sit there. Do not come out until you hear my voice. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandpa." I shoved my bare feet into my combat boots, grabbed my keys, and opened my nightstand drawer. I took out my Sig Sauer and checked the chamber. Loaded. I didn't know what was waiting at Austin's house, but if there was a threat frightening my granddaughter, I wasn't going to greet them with a handshake. I drove the 20-minute route in 12. My truck tore through the suburban silence. Austin was my son, but he was soft, easily manipulated, and terrified of conflict. Monica, however, was a gold digger who masked her entitled nature with fake smiles. She had made it painfully clear she considered Mia an obstacle. Mia was adopted, a decision Austin had made before Monica had dug her claws in. Monica much preferred Leo, their 10-year-old biological son, the golden child. I pulled into their long driveway. It was pitch black dark. Not even the porch light was on. But the most chilling detail was the driveway itself. It was entirely empty. Austin's luxury SUV was gone. Monica's sedan was gone. The silence of the house felt heavier than the darkness. I grabbed the spare key from my glove box and ran to the front door, my grip on the pistol tightening. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. "Mia." I called out. Silence. I flipped the light switch. Nothing. The main breaker panel in the hallway had been flipped down. Who shuts off the power when they leave a child at home? I moved toward the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, heading for Mia's room. It was the smallest room in the house, a stark contrast to Leo's massive bedroom. "Mia, it's Grandpa," I said softly at her doorway. The closet door creaked open. A tiny figure emerged, clutching a worn-out teddy bear I had bought her 3 years ago. She was trembling violently, her teeth chattering. I holstered my weapon and scooped her up. She felt incredibly light, like a bird that hadn't eaten in days. "I've got you," I whispered. "You're safe now." I carried her downstairs, my mind working frantically. I walked into the kitchen, sweeping the beam of my phone's flashlight across the expensive marble countertops Monica constantly bragged about. That was when I saw it, a piece of yellow notebook paper taped to the refrigerator. My hand shook with rage as I pulled it off and shined the light on Monica's loopy, artistic script. "Mia, we have taken Leo to a special training camp for his baseball team. It was last minute. We will be gone for 2 weeks. There is bread on the counter. Do not go outside. The neighbors will call the police. if they see you wandering around, and they will take you away to a bad place. Be good. We are watching you on the cameras. 2 weeks. I looked at the counter. Sitting there was a single loaf of white bread. The plastic bag was covered in green and fuzzy spots of mold. This wasn't negligence. This was calculated malice. My son and his entitled wife had left an 8-year-old child alone in a dark house for 2 weeks with moldy bread and a threat that the police would take her away. I turned my attention to the refrigerator. I grabbed the sleek handle and pulled. It wouldn't budge. I moved my flashlight down. A heavy-duty metal bicycle chain was wrapped tightly around the handles of the French doors, secured with a massive padlock. I looked at Mia. "Why is the fridge locked, honey?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Mommy said I steal food," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She said I eat too much, and that is why groceries are so expensive. She said the food inside is for Leo because he is a growing boy, and I am just lucky to have a roof over my head." The color drained from my face, replaced by a deep seething red. I set Mia down. "Stay right here, baby." I marched out to my truck, grabbed my heavy-duty bolt cutters, and walked back inside. With one sharp squeeze, the metal snapped with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The heavy chain rattled to the floor. I pulled the French doors open. My flashlight revealed the sickening truth. The refrigerator was fully stocked with expensive steaks, fresh fruit, milk, and rows of organic yogurt. Sitting right in the center was a custom bakery cake that read, "Happy Vacation." They had chained it shut not to save food, but to deliberately starve her. I grabbed a bottle of water and handed it to Mia. She drank it in one long, desperate gulp. "We are leaving," I told her, my voice as cold as steel. "Don't pack anything. Leave it all here. We are never coming back to this house." I drove her back to my place. The panic was gone, replaced by a hyper-focused clarity. I made her a hot bowl of tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. She ate it like a 5-star meal, and every bite she took was another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my son. After she fell asleep in my guest room, I walked into my study and opened my laptop. The note said baseball training camp. That was a blatant lie. Austin hated baseball. I logged into Monica's public Instagram profile. Posted just 4 hours ago was a photo of the 3 of them. Austin wearing a linen shirt, Leo holding a tablet, and Monica in a designer bikini, holding a glass of expensive champagne. The background was unmistakable. The massive water slides and ocean view of a luxury cruise deck. The caption read, "Finally some peace, Royal Caribbean icon of the seas, 15 days of absolute bliss with my boys. No distractions, just us. Family first, luxury life blessed, no distractions." That was what she called Mia. They looked happy, relieved. They smiled, that carefree smile of entitled people who genuinely believed they had gotten away with a horrific crime. They thought they had left the old man and the unwanted child behind. They forgot that before I was a grandfather, I was a commander. And I was about to teach them a lesson in loyalty. I picked up my phone and dialed the platinum priority number for the airline. I've maintained top-tier status for 20 years, and I know exactly how to leverage customer service to extract information. When the agent answered, I kept my voice authoritative. "This is William Slater. I'm calling to confirm the return flight details for my son, Austin Slater, and his family. I'm picking them up from the airport." I provided his date of birth and home address. "Yes, Mr. Slater," the agent replied, her keyboard clicking. "I see the reservation here. Austin, Monica, and Leo Slater. Round trip to Miami, first-class tickets. Those were booked 6 months ago." I hung up. My hand gripped the plastic edge of my laptop so tightly, it almost snapped. 6 months. This wasn't a sudden emergency decision. For half a year, Austin and Monica sat at the dinner table with Mia, looked her in the eye, and knew they were going to abandon her. They had saved money, booked luxury suites, and bought first-class tickets, intentionally leaving her name off the manifest. I looked at the large calendar. On my study wall, the massive icon of the seas had departed from Miami yesterday afternoon. Their first scheduled port of call was Nassau, Bahamas, arriving tomorrow morning. Austin looked so much like me, but he lacked my spine. He was a coward who allowed his entitled wife to abuse a child, simply because it was easier than standing up to her. I walked over to the heavy steel safe, bolted into the floor of my closet. I spun the dial, bypassing the stack of municipal bonds, and reached all the way to the back where I kept my emergency war chest. A thick, rubber-banded stack of crisp $100 bills. I counted out $20,000. I'm not just going to rescue Mia, I whispered to the empty room. I'm going to crash their vacation, I'm going to expose them, and then I'm going to take my granddaughter back, legally and permanently. By the time the sun began to rise, painting the morning sky a bruised red, Mia and I were walking through the automatic doors of the airport departures terminal. The wall of noise hit us, instantly, crying babies, rolling luggage, and the droning intercom. For most people, the airport at dawn is a headache. For me, it was a logistical puzzle waiting to be solved. I held Mia's hand tightly. She was wearing a new, slightly oversized pink t-shirt I had bought at a 24-hour superstore on the way. We joined the line for the premium check-in counter. The digital board flashed, Miami to Nassau, departing in 2 hours. We were cutting it close. But successful missions leave no time for overthinking. Mia looked at her new sneakers, avoiding eye contact with the crowds. Grandpa, are you sure we can go? Mommy said airplane tickets cost $1 million. I squeezed her hand. Mommy lies, Mia, we are going. When we reached the front, I smiled politely at the agent. Sarah, 2 one-way tickets to Nassau, please. First class if you have it available. Mia's eyes widened. First class. Sarah asked for our documents. I handed over my passport, Mia's birth certificate, and my heavy metal platinum credit card. I had built my credit with the same rigorous discipline I applied to my military career. Sarah swiped the card. She paused, frowned, and tilted her head. I'm sorry, sir, the card was declined. Behind me, a businessman in a sharp suit sighed loudly. I felt a prickle of heat rise on my neck. Try it again, I said calmly. There must be a mistake. I have a zero balance. She typed the numbers manually. Another pause. She looked up with pity. It's declined again, sir. The system says, do not honor. You might want to call your bank. Buddy, if you can't pay, step aside. The businessman groaned. I turned around slowly, offering him the exact dead-eyed stare I used on fresh recruits who forgot to polish their boots. The look that silently communicated, I have survived wars. Do not test me. He immediately shut his mouth. I pulled my phone out and dialed the priority fraud line on the back of my card. It rang once. This is William Slater. Why is my card being rejected? Mr. Slater, the professional voice replied. We put a freeze on your account. We noticed a very large cash withdrawal at a branch counter yesterday afternoon that drained your available liquid limit. This sudden international travel purchase flagged our fraud algorithm. I froze. I didn't make a withdrawal. How much? $25,000, sir. It was executed at the Main Street branch. The teller verified the signature on file. I closed my eyes. The Main Street branch. That was where Austin worked. He wasn't just a customer. He was the branch manager. He knew exactly how to forge my signature perfectly, having practiced it on report cards his whole life. The betrayal hit harder than the financial loss. He had cleaned out my liquid funds to fund his lavish paradise, ensuring that if I found out about Mia, I'd be too broke to buy a ticket to come after them. He thought he had severed my supply lines. Sir, do you want to officially dispute the charge? The banker asked. No, I said, my voice ice cold. I will handle it personally. I hung up and turned back to Sarah. The businessman tried to step around me. Excuse me, I said, cutting him off. I'm not finished. Sir, if the card is declined, there's nothing I can do. Sarah sighed. I didn't argue. I knelt down on one knee right on the polished floor. The businessman snickered, mocking me. I ignored him. I reached down to my left combat boot. It was a habit ingrained from overseas tours. Never trust a bank in a war zone. Trust your boots. I unlaced the thick leather straps, reached deep into a hidden lining, and pulled out a thick envelope wrapped in plastic. I stood up and dropped the envelope onto the counter. The heavy thud silenced the businessman instantly. I tore open the plastic, revealing the thick stack of uncirculated $100 bills. I began counting out the money until the pile looked like evidence from a cartel bust. I believe this is legal tender, I said flatly. 2 first-class tickets to Nassau, window seats. Sarah stared at the cash, swallowing hard. Yes, sir, of course, sir. She began counting the money, her hands shaking. The rude businessman was completely silent, suddenly fascinated by the ceiling tiles. Mia stared at the money. Grandpa, why do you have money in your shoe? Because banks make mistakes, Mia, I said loudly. And because sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who try to steal from you. But you never let them stop the mission. Sarah handed me the boarding passes with a newfound respect. We walked toward security. Austin thought he had disarmed me. All he had done was force me to revert to my roots. I was a soldier deploying to a hostile theater. The soft chime of the seatbelt sign turning off sounded like a boxing bell. We leveled off at 30,000 feet. I adjusted my wide leather seat, but next to me, Mia sat rigid. She hadn't let go of the armrest since takeoff. A flight attendant with a warm smile moved down the aisle with a cart. Good morning, Mr. Slater. And good morning to you, young lady. Can I get you something to drink? We have warm chocolate chip cookies coming out of the oven. I expected Mia's eyes to light up. Instead, she flinched and shrank back. No, thank you, she whispered. I frowned. Honey, you haven't eaten since that grilled cheese. Have a cookie. Mia shook her head vigorously. I'm not hungry. Just then her stomach gave a loud, undeniable growl. The flight attendant smiled gently, leaving a bowl of mixed nuts and a glass of apple juice on the console. I'll leave these right here. Once she left, I covered Mia's small hand with mine. Mia, why are you lying to me? I know you're hungry. She chewed her lip. Because it costs money, Grandpa. Honey, I bought the tickets. The food is included. Tears welled up in her eyes. No, Grandpa. Mommy said nothing is free. She said when we go places, I have to be careful because I'm expensive. She said the reason they can't buy a boat is because my adoption fees cost so much. She said every time I ask for something special, I'm taking money away from the family budget, and the electric bill won't get paid, and it will be my fault. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. Monica was actively poisoning an 8-year-old child's mind, gaslighting her into believing she was a financial burden. Austin and Monica drove luxury cars and drank imported wine, yet they blamed this little girl for their imaginary struggles. I unbuckled my seatbelt and took both her hands. Mia, listen to me. Every word I say is the absolute truth. Grandpa used to manage millions of dollars for the army. I know how much things cost. Your mother lied to you. Mia's eyes widened. She lied. Yes, you are not a burden. The reason they complain about bills is because your mother buys clothes she doesn't need, and your father loses money gambling. Eating a cookie does not make the lights go out. I picked up the juice and held it out. I have plenty of money, Mia. Here is the new rule. For the next 2 weeks, you do not worry about price tags. Your only job is to be an 8-year-old girl. Eat when you're hungry. Play when you're bored. I will handle the money, and I will handle your parents. Drink. She hesitated, then took the glass and drank the entire thing. Good, I smiled. Now press that blue button. Let's get those warm cookies. For the rest of the flight, Mia ate with a focus that broke my heart. With every bite, I saw the terrified prisoner fading. No one was ever going to lock a fridge on her again. Not while I was breathing. The humidity in Nassau hit us like a wet, heavy towel the moment we stepped out of the air-conditioned terminal. It smelled of diesel fumes, roasting asphalt, and too many bodies pressed into a small space. We took a taxi to the Prince George Wharf cruise port. The driver tried to make small talk, but my mind was strictly on logistics. The Icon of the Seas had docked at 7 this morning and was scheduled to depart at 5 in the afternoon. It was currently 11:30. We had less than 6 hours to locate them, execute the confrontation, and get off the ship. When we arrived at the wharf, it was absolute bedlam. Thousands of sunburned tourists were pouring off the ships. The noise was deafening. I gripped Mia's hand tightly. Stay close to my leg. Don't let go for any reason, I instructed. We pushed through the crowd toward the security checkpoint. A large guard held up a hand. ID and C-Pass cards, he droned. I don't have a C-Pass, I said firmly. I need to purchase a day pass. My son is on that ship with my property. He laughed dryly. Day passes are sold online months in advance, old man. No pass, no entry. Step aside before I call the police. I didn't move. Following the rules is a luxury for people who have time. I reached into my pocket, peeled off a $500 bill from my war chest, folded it small, and leaned in close. Listen to me. I'm a veteran with a scared child. I need you to point me to the supervisor who handles the VIP guest list for emergency family visits. I know there's always a quota. I pressed the folded bill smoothly into his palm. He looked down at the money, then at Mia's terrified eyes, and the rigid determination in mine. The bureaucracy melted away. Go to the blue tent on the far left, he muttered. Ask for Mr. Henderson. If he says no, you didn't hear it from me. Mr. Henderson, an ambitious young man in a sharp suit, started giving me the same speech about capacity until I placed $2,000 in cash directly on his desk. Suddenly, he found a loophole in the system. 20 agonizing minutes later, he handed me 2 temporary VIP visitor lanyards, warning us they expired at 4:30 p.m. We walked down the long concrete pier. The icon of the seas wasn't just a ship. It was a towering, floating monument to excess, painted in garish white and teal, 20 decks high, blocking out the sun. It was exactly the kind of place my son would love. We stepped onto the metal gangway. Our footsteps echoed with heavy finality. The ambush was about to begin. The Windjammer Marketplace dining hall on deck 15 looked like a Roman orgy reimagined by a corporate accountant. The air was thick with the smell of melted garlic butter, roasting meat, and sugary tropical drinks. Pyramids of chilled shrimp and carving stations of prime rib stretched as far as the eye could see. It was an obscene display of waste, a physical manifestation of the entitlement that had nearly starved my granddaughter. Finding them in the crowded maze was surprisingly easy. I saw the bright ring light first, clamped to a table near the floor-to-ceiling ocean windows. Monica was sitting there in a white linen dress, holding a glass of rosé and talking animatedly to her phone screen. She was live streaming, selling her followers the fantasy of the perfect, exhausted mother taking a well-deserved break. Across from her sat Austin, sunburned and wearing a floral shirt. He was laughing, a massive, bright red steamed lobster sitting on a silver platter in front of him. At the far end of the table was Leo, isolated under noise-canceling headphones, picking at cold chicken nuggets, looking entirely miserable. Mia squeezed my hand, her lip trembling. "Grandpa, is that Daddy? Is he going to be mad at us?" I knelt down in the middle of the buffet line. "He has lost the right to be mad, Mia. He has lost the right to be anything but ashamed. Stay right behind me, just watch." I stood up, adjusted my posture, and checked my breast pocket. The crumpled yellow notebook paper felt heavy like a lead weight. I approached their table from behind Austin's chair. The ambient noise of the restaurant faded away, leaving only Monica's high-pitched fake voice carrying through the air. "We are just so blessed, you guys," Monica was saying to her camera. "Austin and I have been working so hard, and we really needed this time to reconnect. It's so important to prioritize self-care." Austin cracked a lobster claw with a loud snap, juice squirting onto his chin. "This is the life, baby," he laughed. They were so wrapped up in their narcissistic bubble they didn't notice the 68-year-old man and the terrified little girl standing 2 feet away. Monica smiled at her phone. "We miss the little ones, of course, but sometimes you just have to." She stopped. Her eyes drifted past the screen and landed on me. Her smile didn't fade. It froze into a grotesque rictus of pure confusion. Her brain short-circuited. "Dad?" Austin choked, dropping the lobster claw onto his plate. I didn't speak. I reached into my pocket, my hand moving deliberately. I pulled out the yellow piece of notebook paper. Monica's phone was still recording her live stream. The comments were surely flying up the screen, but I didn't care. I took one step forward and slapped the yellow paper down, right in the center of Austin's plate. It landed directly on top of the steaming lobster meat, the butter immediately soaking into the jagged edges of the page. But the words were still perfectly clear. "Be good." The silence at the table was absolute. Even Leo looked up from his iPad, pulling off his headphones, his jaw dropping. "Grandpa? Mia?" Austin stared at the butter-stained paper, then slowly looked up at me. His face rapidly drained of color. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I leaned in close, placing both my hands firmly on the edge of the table. "I hope the lobster is good, son," I said. My voice was low, carrying the devastating weight of a sledgehammer. "I hope it tastes infinitely better than the moldy bread you left for your daughter." Monica finally found her voice. She scrambled frantically to grab her phone to end the live stream, but her hands were shaking so violently that she dropped it. The phone landed face up, still broadcasting. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked, the vicious animal underneath finally revealing itself. "You can't be here. This is a private vacation." "Security," I laughed, a cold, dark sound. "Call them, because I have the security footage of you chaining a refrigerator shut. And I think the Bahamian police, and the thousands of people currently watching your live stream, would be very interested to see it." Austin stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over backward. "Dad, please, people are watching. Sit down." I barked. Austin collapsed back into his chair as if his puppet strings had been cut. I beckoned Mia forward. She stepped out, clutching her torn teddy bear. "Look at her." "Austin," I commanded. "You told her you were going to a training camp. You told her she was too expensive to bring along. You left her in the dark to rot while you sat here cracking claws and drinking wine." "I didn't know, Dad," he mumbled pathetically. "Monica said she hired a nanny." "Liar." I slammed my hand on the table. "I saw the text messages. I saw the bank withdrawal you made by forging my signature. You stole from me and you abandoned her." I picked up the lobster plate. Melted butter dripped onto the pristine tablecloth. "Be good." I read the note aloud, my voice dripping with venom. Then, I dropped the plate back onto the table. It shattered. The sharp sound of breaking china echoed like a gunshot through the dining hall. Conversations ground to a halt, heads turned, a heavy hush fell over the room. "We are taking Leo," I said, "and we are taking Mia. When you get back to Miami, there will be a welcoming committee waiting for you." I turned to Leo, who was staring at his parents in horror. "Pack your things, son. We are moving to a different room." Leo didn't hesitate. He grabbed his iPad, stood up, and stood next to his sister without looking back at his parents. Austin put his head in his hands. Monica stared blankly at the shattered plate. "Enjoy the cruise," I said, taking the children's hands. We turned our backs on them and began to walk away. Monica, realizing her curated narrative was dissolving, calculated her options. She could admit she was a monster, or she could paint me as the villain. "Help!" she suddenly shrieked. "He's taking them! He's kidnapping my children! Someone help me!" She threw herself dramatically across the table, knocking over the wine bucket. She scrambled toward us, grabbing Leo's arm with a bruising grip. "Let go of him!" she hissed at me, then looked up at the surrounding crowd with fake tears. "Please, he's not well. He has dementia." The atmosphere shifted instantly. To the uninformed observers, I was a crazy old man, dragging terrified children away from their weeping mother. The hostility from the surrounding tables was palpable. "He broke into our house. He took my daughter," she sobbed. Mia froze in terror of the woman who had locked her in the dark, but to the crowd, it looked like the reaction of a victim. A sunburned tourist stood up, blocking my path. "Let the kids go, buddy." More men stood up, forming a wall between me and the exit. Phones were raised. "Austin, tell them the truth," I said. Austin saw the path of least resistance. "Dad, please," he said, his voice trembling. "Just put the kids down. We told you we'd pay for the facility." He was doubling down. Monica lunged again, trying to snatch Mia. "Get your hands off her," I snarled, stepping firmly between them. Monica recoiled dramatically. "Did you see that?" "He hit me," she screamed to the cameras. I hadn't touched her, but truth doesn't matter in the court of public opinion. Suddenly, the restaurant doors burst open. "Security! Make a hole." 4 men in white uniforms marched in. "Sir, release the minors and step away," the lead officer commanded, his hand hovering over his taser. If I fought physically, I'd be arrested. I let go of the children's hands. "I am complying. I am unarmed." The officer spun me around, pressing me against the buffet counter. The cold plastic of zip ties bit sharply into my wrists. "You're hurting him!" Leo suddenly shouted, shoving his own mother away. "Stop it! Grandpa didn't do anything." "Mom is lying. We left Mia at home with no food." "Grandpa came to save her." The crowd went dead silent. "Officer," I said, against the cold metal counter, "check my breast pocket." Read the yellow note. The officer pulled the butter-stained paper and read it aloud. "Mia, we have taken Leo to a special training camp. Be good, we are watching you on the cameras." He frowned deeply, looking at Monica. "Ma'am, is this your handwriting? He forced me." She stammered. It was a pathetic lie. You don't take a luxury cruise to escape an abuser while leaving your child behind in their reach. "I have the time-stamped security footage of them chaining the refrigerator shut," I said. "I want to see the captain, and I want the FBI contact in Miami on the line. This is a federal crime scene." The officer looked at Monica in disgust. "Uncuff him," he ordered his partner. "We're going to the captain's office, all of us." 10 minutes later, in a private office, the security officer held my phone, playing the security footage from Austin's house. On the screen, Monica was wrapping a heavy bicycle chain around the fridge, while Austin nervously paced. Her cruel words echoed from the small speaker. "She's a bottomless pit. Make sure you locked her bedroom door." When the video ended, the officer looked at Monica with pure, unadulterated disgust. Captain Johansson, a tall man with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders, had watched the video in silence. He turned to Austin and Monica, his face like carved granite. "In 30 years at sea, I have never seen anything quite as cowardly as this," the captain said, his voice resonating with maritime authority. "You have no rights on this vessel anymore. You are not guests. You are liabilities. Escort Mr. and Mrs. Slater to the brig. Confine them in separate holding cells until we reach Miami. Confiscate their devices. But we paid for a suite." $20,000, Austin protested weakly. "Your refund will be processed by the prison system," the captain replied coldly. "Get them out of my sight." The guards grabbed them. Monica began to scream, thrashing violently, yelling about her followers and lawsuits as they dragged her out. Austin simply dropped his head in shame, offering no resistance. The captain turned to me, his expression softening. "Mr. Slater, you've done a brave thing. I'll have my staff arrange a secure guest cabin near the bridge for you and the children until we dock. We'll bring you real food." I took Mia's and Leo's hands. We walked out, heads held high. The vacation was dead. The real storm for Austin and Monica was just beginning. The guest cabin near the bridge wasn't a prison cell, but it certainly felt like a fortified bunker. It was small, functional, and heavily soundproofed. The only noise was the low hum of the ship's ventilation system and the rhythmic chewing of 2 very hungry children. Mia and Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, devouring the massive cheeseburgers the captain had personally ordered for them. They ate with a desperate focus, filling a void of safety that their own parents had ruthlessly hollowed out. I sat in the single armchair by the porthole, watching the bruised purple water churn below us. We were in limbo, waiting for the real world to violently catch up with us in Miami. A soft knock on the door broke the silence. I stiffened. I checked the peephole and opened the door just a crack. It was Austin. He looked terrible. His floral shirt was torn at the shoulder, and his face was blotchy. Standing directly behind him was a young security guard. "I told the guard I needed to give you Leo's asthma inhaler," Austin whispered, refusing to meet my eyes. "Please, Dad, just 5 minutes." "He has 5 minutes, sir," the guard confirmed. I knew Leo didn't have asthma. It was just another manipulative lie Austin was using to buy time. I opened the door wide enough for him to slip inside. The moment the door clicked shut, Austin's mask completely fell. He didn't ask about the inhaler. He didn't even look at the children eating on the floor. He turned to me, grabbing my arm with clammy hands. "You have to drop the charges," he hissed, his voice a frantic rattle. "You have to tell the captain, you overreacted. If I get charged with a felony, if there's a police record involving fraud or child neglect, I lose my banking license, I lose the branch. Monica is going to leave me if the money stops." I pulled my arm away in disgust. You're worried about the bank? You locked a hungry child in a house with a cake she could see but couldn't touch. That is torture, Austin. It was Monica. He blubbered, falling to his knees on the carpet, actually grasping at my pant leg. She has this thing about weight. Please, Dad, I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. Just tell them it was a mistake. I am not going to save you this time, I said, my voice as cold as ice. I am done. You are going to lose the house, the cars, and the wife, because sharks do not stick around when there's blood in the water. Stand up and get out. Austin stared at me with pure venom. I hope you rot, he spat, before turning and walking out, not even saying goodbye to his children. Later that evening, after I had engaged the deadbolt, Leo finally spoke. He was sitting on the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. Mom told me that if I woke Mia up, we couldn't go on the cruise, Leo confessed, his voice breaking into quiet sobs. She said the tickets were only for 3, she said. She said Mia stole money from her purse. She told me Mia was dangerous, and we had to leave her behind to teach her a lesson. I wanted to believe her, because I wanted to go on the water slides. I'm a coward. Mia crawled across the floor, reaching out to put her hand on Leo's shaking shoulder. It's okay, Leo. You told the truth to the policeman today. I watched them hug 2 survivors of a shipwreck, clinging to the same piece of driftwood. I realized then that my mission had evolved. I wasn't just rescuing Mia anymore. I had to rescue Leo from becoming a spineless clone of his father. They were a package deal now, Team Slater. I stepped into the small bathroom, closing the door until it clicked, and pulled the secure satellite phone the captain had loaned me from my pocket. I dialed the number for Rachel Stein, my attorney. Rachel wasn't a warm family lawyer. She was a ruthless legal shark I'd met during complex military contracting disputes. I didn't need sympathy right now. I needed a weapon. Bill, she answered crisply, completely devoid of sleep despite it being past midnight. I assume you have the kids, and Austin and Monica are in the brig? Yes, I said. But we have a problem about the $25,000 he stole. That is just the tip of the iceberg, Rachel said, her voice dropping into the serious tone she reserved for life-ruining news. I ran a full asset check. Austin has been leveraging everything he touches, maxed out credit cards, high-interest personal loans. But the worst part, he forged a power of attorney document 6 months ago. He used it to take out a $300,000 home equity line of credit on your house. The house you own free and clear. The blood drained from my face. My house? Yes, and he didn't stop there. He went to private lenders in Hialeah, loan sharks, Bill, the kind who collect with baseball bats. He lost it all in a speculative crypto coin scheme that crashed last month. He was gambling on the market from his phone on the cruise, trying to hit a jackpot to pay off the sharks before you found out. A wave of nausea washed over me. My son wasn't just a bad father. He was a financial suicide bomber who had strapped a vest of debt to our entire family and pulled the pin. What does this mean for the house? I asked. The payments haven't been made in 3 months. The bank is preparing the notice of default. If we do nothing, you'll be on the street in 60 days, Rachel stated relentlessly. You have 2 choices, Bill. Choice A, you accept the debt, liquidate your retirement savings, sell the land, and save Austin from criminal charges. But you bankrupt yourself and the children's future. And choice B? The nuclear option, she replied. We claim fraud. We file a sworn affidavit to the FBI that he forged your signature. The bank eats the loss. The debt becomes invalid due to identity theft, and you keep the house. But Austin is looking at federal wire and bank fraud charges involving an elderly victim. Mandatory minimum sentencing, 10 to 15 years in federal prison. I sat on the closed toilet lid, looking at my reflection in the mirror. Outside this door, 2 children were sleeping in a fort made of pillows, trusting me to protect them. If I chose choice A, I would be sacrificing the innocent to save the guilty. I would be breaking my promise to give them a stable home. Austin had made his choice when he picked up the pen to forge my name. He made it when he locked that refrigerator. Rachel, I said, my voice steady and resolute. File the charges, cut him loose, understood. Rachel said, I'll have the FBI waiting at the pier when you dock. The return journey to Miami was a blur of gray water and heavy, suffocating silence. The icon of the seas, which had seemed like a floating paradise just 2 days ago, now felt like a massive steel cage. When the thrusters finally fired, to push the behemoth into its berth at the port of Miami, the resulting vibration rattled the teeth in my skull. It was the undeniable sound of reality violently crashing back into our lives. I stood on the lower gangway deck, firmly holding Mia and Leo's hands. We were not disembarking with the other passengers. We were not part of the happy sunburned herd dragging their duty-free liquor toward customs. We were being quietly escorted by the staff captain and 2 security officers through a hidden service exit. Ahead of us, flanked by 4 heavily armed guards, walked Austin and Monica. They looked like ghosts of the entitled people they used to be. Austin walked with his head bowed, staring at his expensive loafers. Monica, however, was still desperately trying to maintain the illusion. She had reapplied her makeup and hastily brushed her hair. She walked with her chin held high, stubbornly refusing to acknowledge the guards gripping her arms. She was marching toward her doom with the blinding arrogance of someone who genuinely believed she could still speak to a manager and have the charges dropped. We stepped off the metal ramp and onto the scorching concrete of the pier. The thick humidity of Florida hit us instantly. It smelled of diesel fuel and ocean salt. But unlike the heat in Nassau, this heat felt like an interrogation room. Waiting for us at the bottom of the ramp were 3 black SUVs with government plates. Standing beside them were 4 officers in tactical vests with FBI printed in bold yellow letters across their backs, alongside 2 uniformed Miami-Dade police officers. And standing right in front of them, looking like a statue carved from ice and granite, was Rachel Stein. She held a thick manila folder in her hands, giving a sharp, professional nod, acknowledging that the package had been delivered. The ship's security team handed their paperwork to the lead FBI agent, a tall man wearing dark sunglasses with a jawline that looked like it could chew through steel. Austin stopped walking. He looked at the black SUVs and the guns on the officers' hips. The sheer reality of the situation finally pierced his denial. His knees buckled slightly, and the guard had to haul him up by the armpits. Monica, however, let out a loud theatrical scoff of disbelief. "Is this really necessary?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "All this drama for a simple family misunderstanding. Do you know how much in taxes we pay? We are platinum members with this cruise line." The lead FBI agent stepped forward. "Monica Slater?" he asked. "Mrs. Slater," she corrected him, snapping her fingers. "And I demand to speak to my lawyer before you." The agent interrupted, his voice completely flat. "Monica Slater and Austin Slater, you are under arrest for federal bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and felony child endangerment across state lines." He casually gestured to the uniformed officers. "Cuff them, no." Monica shrieked. She violently pulled her arm away from the ship guard, only to have it immediately grabbed and twisted behind her back by a police officer. "You can't touch me. This is a prank, right? Bill put you up to this." She spun around, her wild eyes landing on me. "Bill, tell them!" she screamed. "Tell them you are senile. Tell them you forgot you signed the papers." I looked at the vicious woman who had tormented my granddaughter, who had turned my son into a thief, who had lived like a queen on stolen money. I felt absolutely nothing, no anger, no pity, just the cold, satisfying click of a balance sheet finally zeroing out. "I didn't sign anything, Monica," I said calmly, "and neither did Austin, not legally." "Liar!" She lunged toward me, but the heavy steel handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. The sound was sharp, metallic, and incredibly final. "You're just a jealous old man. I'm going to live stream this. I'm going to destroy you." "Check her pockets," the agent ordered. An officer patted her down and pulled out her smartphone. "Hey, give that back. That is my personal property," Monica yelled, thrashing wildly. "It is evidence now, ma'am," the officer replied smoothly, dropping the device into a plastic evidence bag. Austin did not fight. When the officer approached him, He turned around slowly and offered his wrists, tears streaming silently down his blotchy face. As they pushed him toward the back of the first SUV, he looked over his shoulder at Leo. "Leo, son," Austin called out, his voice cracking painfully. "Be good, okay? Listen to Grandpa. I will call you." Leo stood rigidly beside me. He didn't wave. He didn't cry. He simply watched his father disappear behind the tinted glass. He learned a lesson that day that no expensive private school could ever teach. Actions have devastating consequences that cannot be undone with a hug or a plastic toy. Monica fought until the bitter end. As they shoved her into the second vehicle, she braced her legs against the doorframe. "I did nothing wrong," she screamed to the sky. "I am a good mother. I fed her. She had bread. The girl is a liar." "She is the problem." The officer firmly pushed her head down, shoved her inside, and slammed the heavy door shut. Her muffled screams were instantly cut off. Rachel walked over to us. "It's over, Bill," she said softly. "Is she coming back, Grandpa?" Mia whispered, trembling. "No, honey," I said, squeezing her hand. "Not for a very, very long time." The family court building in downtown Miami smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a place where the grim reality of broken homes was processed in 15-minute intervals. But for us, this was the final, decisive battleground. I sat on the hard wooden bench in the front row with Rachel Stein to my left. Across the aisle sat Austin and Monica. They weren't wearing their designer clothes today. They were wearing bright orange jumpsuits, provided by the county jail, their wrists shackled heavily to their waists. Without his expensive watch, Austin looked incredibly small. Monica's roots were showing. Her makeup was entirely gone, and her face was a mask of sullen, defeated rage. Judge Elena Vance swept into the room. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with eyes that had seen every variation of human cruelty imaginable. "We are here to determine the permanent custody arrangement for Leo and Mia Slater," Judge Vance announced, her gavel cracking sharply. "We are also here to address the petition for the termination of parental rights filed by Mr. William Slater." Austin's public defender stood up nervously. "Your Honor, my clients acknowledge that mistakes were made. However, they believe termination is too severe. They are willing to take parenting classes." "Counselor," the judge interrupted, holding up a hand. "I have read the police report. I have seen the video footage of a chained refrigerator. Do not insult my intelligence with the word mistakes. This was a siege." She turned her gaze to Rachel. "Ms. Stein, you mentioned additional financial evidence?" Rachel stood up smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor. 13 years ago, when Mr. Slater's wife passed away, she left a small inheritance. Mr. Slater placed it into a protected trust fund specifically designated for the future education of his grandchildren. When Mia was adopted, he added her name to the trust." I watched Austin's back stiffen in horror. He didn't know I knew about this part. He thought I only knew about the house. 2 days before the defendants embarked on their cruise, Rachel continued relentlessly, a withdrawal was made from this trust in the amount of $25,000. The stated reason on the bank form was emergency medical surgery for Mia Slater. The courtroom went dead silent. "There was no surgery, Your Honor. Mia was perfectly healthy. We traced the serial numbers of the bills. They were used to pay for the upgrade to the Royal Loft Suite on the Icon of the Seas. They did not just leave Mia behind to starve. They literally stole her college fund to pay for the vacation they excluded her from. And they did it by forging William Slater's signature." The judge looked at the documents, her face hardening into stone. She looked at Austin. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Austin stood up, his chains rattling loudly. He looked at me, searching for the father who had always bailed him out. But that father was gone. I was going to put it back when the crypto went up. He cried defensively. "It was an investment. I did it for the family. You did it for yourself," the judge snapped, slamming the folder shut. "I have heard enough. In the matter of Slater versus Slater, the court finds the defendants unfit in every conceivable definition of the word." She raised her gavel. "Mr. William Slater is hereby granted full permanent legal and physical custody of Leo and Mia Slater. Furthermore, I am granting the petition to terminate parental rights." You have forfeited the privilege of being parents. You will have absolutely no contact with these children." "No!" Monica screamed, jumping up and knocking her chair over as the bailiffs moved in to drag her away. "They are my babies. You are ruining my image." Austin didn't fight. He simply slumped into the arms of the deputies, a dead weight of shame and regret, as they hauled him back to his cell. The farmhouse we bought sits on 4 beautiful acres of land in the quiet, rolling hills of North Carolina. The floors creak when you walk on them, but it is ours. It is paid for, and most importantly, it is safe. I stood at the kitchen island, kneading dough for a loaf of sourdough bread. Through the window, I could see Leo throwing a tennis ball for the 2 stray dogs we had adopted from the shelter. He was wearing jeans stained with grass, laughing a deep, genuine belly laugh. Mia sat at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of the 3 of us standing in front of the house. The crunch of gravel announced the mail carrier. I walked out and retrieved the mail. The very last envelope was plain white, with a return address stamped in red ink. Federal Correctional Institution. Low security. Austin Slater. I waited until that evening when the kids were safely asleep. I sat in my armchair by the crackling stone fireplace and slit the envelope open. "Dear Dad," it began. It was exactly what I expected. No remorse. No questions about how Leo was doing in school or if Mia was happy. Just a litany of complaints about the terrible prison food, the mean guards, and how Monica was filing for divorce to pin it all on him. He ended it with a demand. "You owe me this, Dad. You raised me. You can't leave your son to rot in here. I need money for the commissary." I lowered the paper, looking into the dancing orange flames. "I owe you nothing," I whispered to the empty room. "I gave you life, love, and opportunities, and you gave me betrayal. I owe my loyalty to the people who sleep safely upstairs. I owe my protection to the innocent. I didn't fold the letter. I didn't save it. I leaned forward and tossed the paper directly into the fire. The corner curled black, and the words Austin Slater burned away, followed by his complaints and his false prayers, until it was nothing but a fragile gray flake of ash floating up the chimney. They tell you that blood is thicker than water. They tell you family is everything. They are wrong. Family is not about whose DNA you share. It is about who would bleed for you and who is holding the knife. I had to amputate a limb to save the body, but listening to the peaceful silence in this house, I know I made the only choice that mattered. I am Bill Slater. I am a father. I am a grandfather, and we are finally free. In the months that followed that final court date, the reality of our new life began to set in. Healing is not a linear process, especially not for children who have been taught that their worth is directly tied to their utility or their price tag. Mia was the first to show signs of profound change. The frantic hoarding of food stopped after about 2 months. For the first few weeks on the farm, she would sneak crackers and apples into her room, hiding them under her mattress or stuffing them into the pockets of her winter coats. I never scolded her. I never raised my voice. I simply replaced whatever she took with fresh food and made sure the fruit bowl on the kitchen island was perpetually overflowing. One evening, I found her sitting on the floor of the pantry, surrounded by jars of homemade jam and bags of flour. She wasn't eating. She was just staring at the sheer volume of it. "Grandpa," she had asked, her voice small, "what happens if we run out?" I sat down on the hardwood floor next to her, my bad knees protesting loudly. "We won't, Mia, and even if a hurricane comes and blows the roof off, or a blizzard snows us in for a month, we have enough stored in the cellar to feed an entire platoon. You will never, ever be hungry in this house again." She had leaned her head against my shoulder, and for the first time, she didn't look terrified. The next morning, I found the hidden apples, returned to the fruit bowl. She had finally started to believe that the refrigerator would remain unlocked. Leo's healing took a different path. His trauma was less visible but no less damaging. Monica had raised him to believe that love was transactional, measured in expensive gifts, brand-name clothes, and the exclusion of others. He struggled with the quiet simplicity of the farm. Without an iPad constantly in his hands, or a new video game to distract him, he was forced to sit with his own thoughts. The breakthrough came entirely by accident. I was in the barn, trying to fix the engine of an old John Deere tractor I had bought at an auction. I'm a logistics man, not a mechanic, and my frustration was mounting. Leo wandered in, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, looking bored and out of place in his pristine sneakers. "It's the carburetor, Grandpa," he said quietly, pointing to a rusted metal component. I paused, wiping grease from my forehead with a rag. "What do you know about carburetors, son?" He shrugged, looking at his feet. "I watched a lot of videos on YouTube when Mom and Dad were yelling at each other. The guy in the video said if the engine stalls when you give it gas, the jets in the carburetor are clogged." I handed him a wrench. "Show me." That afternoon, covered in oil and smelling of gasoline, Leo smiled for the first time since he stepped off the icon of the seas. He realized that he didn't need a perfectly curated image to be valued. He didn't need to be the golden child on a luxury cruise. He just needed to be a boy with a wrench, helping his grandfather fix a broken machine. We spent the rest of the summer rebuilding that engine together, side by side, piece by piece, much like we were rebuilding our family. When September rolled around, I enrolled them both in the local public school. It was a small brick building with squeaky floors and teachers who knew every student by name. The morning of their first day, Mia wore a bright yellow dress she had picked out herself, and Leo wore a simple pair of jeans and a plain t-shirt. There were no designer logos, there were no status symbols. As they walked toward the yellow school bus, idling at the end of our gravel driveway, Leo instinctively reached out and grabbed his sister's hand. He didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He didn't care if it wasn't cool, he was simply protecting his unit. Team Slater, I stood on the porch, holding a mug of black coffee, watching the bus disappear down the winding country road. The crisp autumn air smelled of wood smoke and turning leaves. The massive weight that had been pressing down on my chest for the last year finally, completely lifted. Justice is a strange concept. People often confuse it with revenge. They think justice is about making the guilty suffer in equal measure to the pain they caused. But sitting here on this farm, watching my grandchildren thrive, I realize that true justice isn't about destroying the darkness. It's about fiercely protecting the light that the darkness tried to extinguish. Austin and Monica got their revenge on themselves. The federal trial was swift and merciless. Austin's banking license was permanently revoked, and he was sentenced to 12 years in a federal penitentiary for wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. Monica tried to turn on him, offering to testify against him in exchange for a lighter sentence, but the FBI already had an airtight case. They didn't need her testimony. The judge, disgusted by her lack of remorse and blatant child endangerment, handed her an 8-year sentence. Her social media accounts were taken down. Her followers vanished, and she became a forgotten statistic in the prison system. They lost their freedom, their wealth, and their status. But most importantly, they lost the privilege of watching Mia and Leo grow into incredible, resilient human beings. I went back inside the house. The kitchen was warm from the fire I had built earlier. I walked over to the refrigerator to grab a carton of milk for my coffee. I didn't need to use bolt cutters. I didn't need to undo a padlock. I just pulled the handle, and the door swung open, shedding a bright, welcoming light into the room. I smiled, closed the door, and poured my coffee. We were home, and we were finally truly safe.